I know that the designers, they have something, they have passion, and all they need is this push for them to know how to actually make money out of their brands. Jordan is a small country at the end of the day, and if we want to grow and make the business more profitable for us and the designers, we need to grow internationally. So I want to go to the conference to shed the light on our designers, on what we're doing, on the talent and passion that we have in Jordan.
We view art and culture as the key of a prosperous social and economic development. I think that our biggest challenge is to prove to the private and public sectors how art and culture contribute to the economy and the resilience of the society. So I hope this conference will be an opportunity to think about new economic models with entrepreneurs, investors and policymakers.
We started Neighbourhood with one vision to prepare the next generation for the future jobs. One of the challenges we faced here was to scale the quality of the education and scale our network and structure in different regions and in different parts of our country. So I expect to meet a great community of people and bridge the gap between the South and the North.
Good morning and very welcome to all of you. I'm Brian Maguire, I'm your moderator this morning, and here we have...
I'm Sumi Somaskanda, your co-moderator this morning. Good morning to everyone.
So we'd like to welcome all of you to this excellent event. So there's a lot to cover today. The very most important thing for you to know is the hashtag, of course, for your social media. We ask you to switch your mobile phones to silent, but please take photographs and make comments throughout the day as well. We'll try and bring some of those, incorporate them within the event. The hashtag is EU Med for Business, EU MED for numeral business. And you'll see this, I think it's on your brochure as well. Sumi, some housekeeping?
Yeah, some other housekeeping notes. I'm sure you all have phones. Please download this app. This is an app for this conference. This will help you with all the information you need to know about the agenda, the participants, the speakers, but also one of the key elements of this conference, as you know, is we'll be voting on recommendations that you yourself will come up with to work on with the European Commission. And so that will be done through this app, so don't forget to download that. The other item that's important is we have wonderful simultaneous translators sitting there who will help us. So if you choose to speak Arabic or French, that is fine, but you will need to speak slowly and clearly so that everyone can understand you. So don't hesitate to speak in whatever language that you feel most comfortable in. If you do want to tweet out using the hashtag, for example, that Brian mentioned, please remember that we're operating under Chatham House rules. So that means, of course, you can share the information that's said here, shared here in this room, but make sure that you don't attribute it to a specific person without asking for that person's consent beforehand.
And also we're conscious that this is the time of Ramadan and many of you are participating in Ramadan. So first of all, we really appreciate that you're here, that you'll participate in such a vibrant discussion today. We know that some people will not be able to take part in the lunch, but there's the dinner later on today after Ramadan finishes today. And so we're sensitive to this, and we thank you for that also. For those of you who are not participating in Ramadan, there will be other refreshments during the day today. The Wi-Fi, we understand there was a small issue with it for iPhone. You'll be able to access it, and you may have a pop-up issue if you're on iPhone. but there's no password required for the Wi-Fi today, and that's true on taxi services. You find it just remotely there. Our first speaker.
That's right. We are really happy to welcome Michael Köhler. He is the director for the Neighbourhood South, DG NEAR. Many of you in this room might know him already. I hope you do. And Michael, please join us.
Thank you, Sumi. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends. Good morning, Janet. Good morning, Henrike. Good morning, Sima. Good morning, Gio. Good to have you here. This is your event. Bonjour, chers amis. صباح الخير وأهلا وسهلا في بروكسل وإلى ضيوفنا المسلمين رمضان كريم. I'm very happy to have you all here. Now, my good colleagues in the directorate told me who you are, and they gave you names. Young entrepreneurs, incubators, accelerators, that's good, researchers and journalists, financiers, diplomats, partners. Fine. In whatever way you want to have this kind of discussion and event. But now this moment is specifically important in May 2019. Yes, it's perhaps not the easiest month for many of you to travel because of Ramadan, the family commitments that you have, and you want to be with the friends. I just imagine that somebody in Cairo organized such a conference on 25 or 24 December, Christmas time. I would find it a bit difficult, dear Khaled, sorry for that, to say, well, that is a date, a time which I want to pass in Cairo and not with the family. But this is an important moment because right now we are sitting here in Europe to think about the future orientations of European policies and politics. Only this weekend we are going to have the European elections. After the elections, we are going to renew our institutions. We are going to have new commissioners, a new high representative for foreign policy. And we are thinking about the way how we want to orient our partnership with the countries of the region, with the region altogether, and also how we want to use our money. We're thinking about new financial instruments. We're thinking about new partnerships with our friends from the international finance institutions. And Janet is here, based in Cairo, so you spent Christmas in Cairo. And you are representing EBRD, which is, I think, the foremost organization when it comes to private sector financing, and we are proud of our partnership with you, not only in Egypt, but also many countries of the region. So it is a right moment to brainstorm and to give us fresh ideas, your ideas, because what we want to see is impact of our assistance on the ground. I don't want to report to my commission at the end of the year that again we spend 1.7 billion euros in grant money for the region. I want to report on what we achieved. Which jobs, which new industries, which competitive edge we were able to realize this way. And for that, we need you, because we can only help. But the innovation and the effort needs to come from the people who are Egyptians, Tunisians, Moroccans, Jordanians, Algerians, Lebanese, and so forth. So this is the idea, which means that we are not here in a l'art pour l'art fashion. We are here to shape new policies and to come up with recommendations, both for the international organizations, such as the European Commission and its financing partners, but also for the governments in the region, to tell them how we can even more effectively unleash the potential that all you, that your brains, that your hands and arms represent. But that's enough talk already. I think we have a little trailer that puts all this into, let's say, much better and much more visible motion. And if the technical colleagues are ready, then let's take a look at the trailer.
I know that the designers, they have something, they have passion, and all they need is this push for them to know how to actually make money out of their brands. Jordan is a small country at the end of the day, and if we want to grow and make the business more profitable for us and the designers, we need to grow internationally. So I want to go to the conference to shed the light on our designers, on what we're doing, on the talent and passion that we have in Jordan.
We view art and culture as the key of a prosperous social and economic development. I think that our biggest challenge is to prove to the private and public sectors how art and culture contribute to the economy and the resilience of the society. So I hope this conference will be an opportunity to think about new economic models with entrepreneurs, investors, and policymakers.
We started Neighbourhood with one vision to prepare the next generation for the future jobs. One of the challenges we faced here in Tunis to scale the quality of the education and scale our network and structure in different regions and in different parts of our country. So I expect to meet a great community of people and bridge the gap between the South and the North.
So as any good teacher and as any good politician knows, if you have a good message, then repeat it, repeat it, repeat it. So we're going to see this trailer a couple of times today until you know it by heart. But in the meantime, we have some new words. And the new words come from our commissioner. Everybody knows Johannes Hahn. Johannes is the right pronunciation, but his friends call him Geo. You may call him His Excellency or Your Excellency if you want. But, you know, the interesting thing about Johann is that he believes still after 5 years in this job that he's in the wrong job. He believes that he is in reality an entrepreneur, and he was an entrepreneur. He was a manager in one of Austria's biggest companies. And every time when we talk to him about politics, he reminds us about business life. Every time when we speak about grandiose ideas, he thinks of projects and realizations. So really forced us to think a little bit like business persons. And that is what I take from the 5 years with you, Gio. But now I stop. I think it's better to listen to you and to listen to your vision for entrepreneurship and investment in the region and how to further the young generation that want to enter this sector. So please come here and address us if you so.
Thank you, Michael, for this very kind introduction. First of all, good morning to everybody, and you had just a chance to check if you're already awoken and are not looking at the same film twice. But fortunately, there's only one commissioner, so you will only hear one speech. But first of all, I would like really to welcome everybody, not only here in the room, but also on the other 4 places around the Mediterranean. And in particular, I would really like to welcome our ambassadors, and I would like to use the opportunity to thank you for our good cooperation during the past couple of years. And I think this is part of our, at least partly, success story we can tell you. But first of all, I would like to thank everybody who is here today with us. Indeed, it was already said, for some of you, it's Ramadan, and therefore, in particular, I really appreciate the efforts you have made to make it possible to be here. Indeed, the last 5 years have shown more clearly than ever what happens in the Maghreb, and that Mashrek affects the everyday lives of citizens, not only in the region, but also here in Europe, not just in the southern coastal regions, but in the whole of the European Union. And I think this is important to highlight and to stress. We are not talking about only the relationship within the basin between the EU member states in the Mediterranean, but in the whole European Union. therefore, working with our southern neighborhood is not a choice, it's a necessity, but it's a, may I say, a very nice necessity, at least for myself, and I really appreciate and have appreciated to do so. In my time as Commissioner for the European Neighbourhood Policy, as it was said already by Michael, I have put a lot of attention and dedication to economic development, and I believe this is at the heart of our relations with the South, because I believe very much it's key to stabilization. And it should not be misunderstood in terms of political stability. Of course, there must be political stability, continuity, but the most important is to have rule of law, to have democratic developments, but we also have to acknowledge what is possible, what can be done, what can be achieved, and what is maybe too much within a short time frame to achieve in that respect. But what we are aiming at by pushing the economy is, of course, to address all the possible conflicts which are still around, and this is in particular to address radicalization, to address human trafficking, if it appears, and I think it's also the best way to address social unrest. The more we are successful in pushing the economy, in pushing in particular the private sector, I think the more a society could become resilient. And this is what counts also from a European perspective, what are our interests, to have partners in our neighborhood which are able to perform a successful economy, giving people perspectives, opportunities, and choices. And therefore, once again, without proper economic development, we will not be able to address all these challenges, and none of our nations will achieve their full potential. Perhaps more to the point, the rising generation on both sides of the Mediterranean expects economic opportunity, and when traveling to the region, I try to reach out also to the business sector, in particular to young entrepreneurs, to get the feedback. Michael was already saying, I have had a former life in almost the previous century, but I'm very much dedicated to the business sector, to, let's say, real entrepreneurs, people, young people, who dare to risk something, to try something, which includes, by the way, to fail. But we have to develop, so to say, culture which I wouldn't say enables to fail, but which accepts the possibility to fail, provided one is willing to stand up to try it again. And the real success stories of life are that you had mostly to fail once or twice in order to be finally successful, because usually you really learn out of your mistakes and whatever happened. And therefore also this is part of our efforts, to create a conducive environment where people can try something, have to risk something, but are not, so to say, are not in a way seen as a problem within a society if they have failed. And I think this is also something where I urge in particular those who have responsibility for societies to be aware of this, to contribute, to change mentalities. But may I say, these are particular problems within the European Union, within our, or based on our mentalities. But we should be aware that there are aspects which are beyond mere rational aspects, which are also decisive for a well-functioning, future-oriented business sector. But again, coming back to the core topic of today, I think investing in the young generation and their skills, giving them jobs and chances to develop their potential, creates, again, more cohesive societies, where people can realize, again, their ambitions for themselves and, of course, their families. This is the case on both sides of the Mediterranean, but in Morocco, Algeria, Egypt, more than a quarter of people are under 15. In Jordan, more than a third. In the EU, less than a sixth. It's essential to give the younger generation opportunities everywhere, but of course, particularly in the southern Mediterranean, and this is why you are here today. The European Commission doesn't create jobs. We did it in the past in the administration. Nowadays, we have even slightly reduced the number of people. In some countries, they believe it's still too less. But I'm proud about our people, what they are doing, not only ahead of European elections, but in the course of all the years. And I would like to use the opportunity to thank our people, my people, for all the efforts, and today in particular those who have contributed to this conference in a not easy environment in times of dates and everything. So thank you, and I'm very grateful for this initiative. So actually, politicians cannot create jobs directly, only in the bureaucracy, and this is not what we're aiming at. What we try to create is a framework, a conducive framework, which again enables you to do something, to pursue your interests, your abilities, your possibilities and choices. But in order to get a feeling what we should do, it's important to hear your voice, because this is crucial. Policymakers in Brussels, but also in your home capitals, need to hear from you what your priorities are and how we can best create, again, the conditions for you to prosper. Because if policymakers create the right climate, your side of the bargain is to grow businesses that offer new opportunities to others to work and to improve their lives, and by doing so, you will create additional jobs. And looking at the population growth rate, it's of imminent importance to create jobs. If I'm right in mind, in Egypt, one has to create almost 1 million jobs per year due to the current annual population growth. And this is something which is only achievable if the private sector is doing so, is not only contributing, but is doing so. If I'm looking into the current economic relationship, the European Union is the first economic partner in trade and investment of our southern partners in the Mediterranean. We are all well aware of the classic challenges facing the economies of the region. Youth unemployment is on average 30% in the region. For young women, Michael was already referring to it, it's 40%, and exclusion of women from the job market is a loss for the whole economy. Economic growth is slow, with trade and investment flows that have not yet reached the pre-2011 level in many countries, and which are suffering the repercussions of conflict in some cases. And since I became the relevant commissioner, we have given specific focus to all these challenges, and this also includes, and that's why I'm so keen to do something for the economic development, to work with you. I'm extremely eager to address what they call risk potentials. I think the diversification of the economy is of utmost importance in order to have indeed a resilient structure of the business sector. if countries like Egypt and Tunisia, for example, are heavily depending on tourism, we have seen what, unfortunately, one or two tourist attacks can trigger. And whenever I was in charge of, or was finally leading companies, my first assessment was always to see where are the risks for a country, for a company, and now I'm looking from the perspective of a politician, what are the risks for a country, for a relationship, wherever. And if one is too much dependent on something or on somebody, and this is not to be seen critical towards the person or towards the business sector. It's simply we have to be aware if you're too much dependent on one thing, there is always an inherent risk that something might happen, and it has a very long-lasting effect. And therefore, so to say, distribution of risks, mitigating the risk is of utmost interest and relevance, and this is only achievable if we have a widespread diversification of economic activities, if we have a lively, small and medium-sized business sector which is vibrant, which is backing the whole economy, and therefore your part is so essential for the whole success and for the whole success of your countries, once again, not only in economic terms, but also in political terms. By the end of this budget period, and this will be by the end of next year, we will be able to say that around half of our overall 11 billion euro funding for the Southern Neighbourhood will have been spent on economic cooperation. Around 30 to 60% of individual country allocations are dedicated already today to job creation and inclusive growth. And this is complemented by the extensive use of blending operations through the Neighbourhood investment platform. And a significant part of the billions we are investing in economic cooperation has been dedicated to the private sector development, with projects that facilitate, again, entrepreneurship, skills and innovation, develop SMEs, promote trade and investment, and improve, of course, necessary the legal and the regulatory environment of businesses. I'm deeply convinced it's the small and medium-sized sector which creates the job, which is responsible for 95% of jobs within a society. So it's the backbone of the economy, and we have to strengthen, if you like, this part of the skeleton of a society. But before I go any further, I would like to say frankly, and this is, so to say, something critical, and but one should be also, we should be frank to each other, and I really would like to say and to state that it would have been possible to go even further in all our efforts. Efforts have been made in all your countries, but there is so much more to do. We in the Union cannot compensate for the missed opportunities we see in the region. The Mediterranean is the least economically integrated region of the world, with a huge opportunity cost amounting to 1 to 2% lower growth of GDP in the region. We all know how it has come about that such a tiny proportion of the region's trade is south-south, but it's in no one's interest that this continues. And I give you one, I think, very impressive figure. If you take the Union for the Mediterranean, and by the way, I'm grateful for our cooperation also in this conference, it consists of the 28 member states of the Union and 14 Mediterranean countries. The participation of Syria is suspended. And if you take this 42 as 100, 90% of trade amongst the 42 is trade within the European Union. 7 to 8% is trade between the European Union and the 14 countries. And only 2 to 3% is trade amongst the 14. And part of these 14 are the 6 Western Balkan countries, which have already quite a good interregional cooperation. By the way, still a lot of untapped potential. But if I deduct everything, I mean, you can sense what is, so to say, untapped and what should be done in order to strengthen economic relationship. And this is also a plea on my side to you to push politicians in your countries to look after this. Because if I'm talking very often to representatives from your countries, they first ask for further opportunities to push the bilateral trade relationship between the Union and the respective countries. Very often we are talking about increasing quotas, also the already current ones are not exhausted. But I also hear there and there complaints about formal and informal trade barriers with the respective neighbor. And I'm always ready to follow up on this, but I never get really substantial examples. And I think this is also something we should be aware. There is a lot of potential, but it's also already today possible to use more opportunities provided the regulatory schemes in the region are more attractive for doing business. We are ready to assist everyone who is willing to address this issue, but we need clarity what should be done and where are the deficiencies. Coming back to the few, it's not many, but missed opportunities in the region is the investment in climate. Every investor, it's about investment climate. I think there also, by the way, more, there's a bigger potential in terms of addressing the opportunities stemming from your favorable climate situation in terms of renewable energy production. But here we have, I think, progressed quite well, at least in some countries, and also this should stimulate us to do even more. I think at the end of the day, the region could be an exporter, for example, of electricity produced by renewable, provided again the facilities are there, etc. But I would like now to point to the investment climate as such, and here one has to recognize in particular those investors who are, so to say, shopping around the globe have, per definition, the choice to invest wherever they believe it's good for them. And that's why they have always another option. And investors like to go where they are sure that, by the way, rule of law is secure, where rights are respected, including the rights of their employees, and where corruption is the exception, not the norm. Then there's a vexed question of truly free trade. In the Union, we believe, not only we, but also your economies benefit from free trade, and that the deep and more comprehensive free trade areas that are on offer are an opportunity that should not be missed. Certainly, we don't believe that imposing tariffs is the right way forward. Why I'm saying this, we are discussing with some countries in the region what we call deep and comprehensive free trade agreements think the French abbreviation is ALECA. And I know that in some countries this has created a lot of concerns, in particular of the business sector. Our people are ready to explain the benefits. We are not trying to impose something. We really believe that there are mutual benefits for both of us. And we have such trade agreements already with some Eastern countries. Ukraine, little Moldova, almost little Georgia. And you can talk to them, not to us, talk to them. What are already the first concrete results? And it's a double-digit increase of export from these countries to the European Union. Such an agreement, for instance, means to accept certain European standards, and in many areas, technical ones, but also if it's about food safety as an example, European standards are global standards. So if you have access to the European market, quasi per definition, you have access to the global market. There are many benefits. There are also some challenges, of course. It's not easy, first, to comply with all these challenges, but at the end, you will be awarded in the best possible way. But once again, we are not trying to impose something. We simply want to stimulate, to create opportunities. And I think very often it's about correct and serious information and communication. But in the economy, it's like in politics, 50% is psychology. And it depends how things are received in the one or the other way, but therefore concrete and serious communication is extremely necessary. Crucially, it's also the regulatory and banking environments in individual countries which often don't favor the kind of lively entrepreneurial culture that is needed. Whenever I hear from business people in the region, they complain of red tape and particularly the burdens of small and for small businesses. All the evidence is that it's not big business that creates, as I said already, the most jobs. It's small and medium-sized enterprises that provide the swiftest gains in employment, and that is why it's essential to create the right conditions for individual entrepreneurs to do business. That means the right legal framework and the necessary respect for rule of law, but also the right conditions for small operators to turn ideas into jobs. SMEs are an engine for job creation. There is evidence all around the globe about this, and it's about us and you to do so and to make it possible. We all know how much talent is in the region, but it's time to stop talking about how better to match skills to job opportunities and make sure that the training and education on offer are fit for purpose. And finally, beyond training, we need to make sure that the right support is there for risk takers and innovators. It's particularly important to stimulate startups, whether they are giving a new twist to traditional activities to find new markets or helping to diversify the economy into new areas. There is a wise word of a mentor of mine 30, 40 years ago. Of course, you cannot, put it everywhere, but he once said to me, you know, high technology, low profit, low technology, a lot of profit. Once again, it's not something which fits always, but I wanted simply to say it's important, of course, to look into IT, in the IT opportunities and everything which is related to it. But the business sector consists of many other elements, aspects, etc. And some things which might look easy, not so complicated, might be indeed easy and not so complicated. and maybe the profit margin is maybe very often bigger than in other segments. It should not prevent you for doing whatever you like, but I simply wanted to point that there are many, many different job opportunities. I'm already too long, that's why I will cut what's in my papers. I think during the past 5 years we have done already a lot on very concrete activities concerning the creating of jobs and growth in the region. Again, I believe much more could have been done provided the relevant environment is in place. We are here today to discuss what could be done in the next couple of years based on what is already achieved. What I have tried to implement or to inject in my people's mindset is the idea of offering and providing investments. I don't like the idea to be a donor or to give grants, etc. I like much more the idea to invest in something, to invest in people. And it's not about getting something in return in terms of money. There are many different options to get something in return. Our, so to say, return expectation is to have even better functioning neighborhood, even more stable and resilient society in our neighborhood. This is what is in our utmost interest. But if you, so to say, look into something with an investment mind, investment spirit, you might analyze a given project in a different way, because you always have to ask you, do I get something in return? And ideally, do I get something more in return than I have invested? And this is what counts, what is decisive. And I would like, if there's any kind of legacy of my work, then if I could inject this idea, these principles in a sustainable manner. But I hope that in the next 24 hours we can hear a lot from you now about all the different measures which has to be taken, your ideas, how to further promote, what you need, for instance, in terms of access to finance, what you think is necessary on the regulatory scheme. So simply don't hesitate. It's now a kind of 24-hour brainstorming exercise which we would like to see, to hear. And finally, in order to become concrete, to get quasi a task, what has to be done, I think we can nail down, and this is our aim, all this idea to, for instance, 12 top priorities for concrete actions. And first we will have an opportunity again, or I have an opportunity again tonight at the dinner. And of course, it will be, from my humble point of view, a late one, because we will respect, of course, the fast. And so we can start only, I think, at, if I'm right in mind, 9:33. Easy to remind. And, but then we will enjoy it. And tomorrow, I hope I will receive a lot of concrete proposals, what should be done. And I can only reassure you and already promise you we will follow up on this, no matter who will be the next commissioner. One of our founding fathers, Jean Monnet, once said, people are coming and going, but institutions are there, and it's about us to frame the work of our institutions. And in that respect, feel free, come up with your ideas, tell us what should be done, and we will try to really implement it in concrete acts and doings. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Commissioner. Thank you for your talk. Thank you for sharing your vision with us. And you all heard that this is not what intelligent speechwriters put together, but it is Johannes Hahn's own vision. And you have been pestering us with this for 5 years, and you were right to do so. Now, every vision is by definition a bit macro. But life consists of macro and micro. So if the commissioner gave us the talk, we now have to listen to somebody who's doing the walk. And there is Seema, who helps us. Seema Najjar from Jordan, and I would all invite you to give Seema a huge hand. You all know her, because, and thank you for making it, Seema, you have been starring our trailer, and every time we are going to see it again, we are going to see you at the beginning of it. Now, Seema has everything I'm jealous of. Not only visibly, she is young, and she's a young entrepreneur, but if I look at what she is doing at her young age, which I'm not going to reveal, I see which many missed opportunities I have been going through. So you are, let's read it out. Not only we have seen already your engagement in the fashion industry, design, you are running not less than 3 companies in Jordan, is that right? Co-founded and founded, so even more. And you have very, very impressive followership also in the social media, on the internet and so forth. I don't reveal the numbers of millions of news and the numbers of thousands of followers, because if you compare that with my own Twitter account, frankly, it doesn't compare very favorably. But it all means that you shouldn't listen to me, you should listen to Seema Najjar. You have the floor.
Okay. Thank you. Hello, everyone. So, first of all, they told me to speak, the last one to speak. And I know everyone is tired, and I just want to tell you something. I'm not a yoga instructor, but I need you all to stand up, please. Since I'm the last, I get to tell the shots, right? So, straight. I need you all to inhale in, inhale out. Can you all just go to the right? Ah, that feels good, isn't it? Straight to the left. Ah, that was for me, honestly. So now we can begin. Thank you. Thank you all for having me today in EU Mid Business. I'm really honored to be here. As I said, I'm not a yoga instructor or instructor at all. I co-founded and founded 4 companies. My last company, as you saw. Would you like to have the trailer again? Are you sure? We can have it, right, Mike? So why are we here? We're here to connect, to explore, to talk about the challenges. The thing that we do in my 4th startup, Design Space, it's just like any other incubator, to be honest. We don't do anything special. We mentor them, networking events, workshops, boot camps, all of these things that usually incubators do. But what I focus on is, from my experience as an entrepreneur, is connecting them together, is let them be more open together, let them all talk together, let them share their experiences and help each other. This is the most important thing, I think, for youth or not youth. It's very important to have this support group. And this is what we succeeded in attracting. Now we have 90 designers, and by the way, 90% of them, Michael, they're women. Just saying, for your numbers. So it's good that we didn't want to focus on women, we just wanted to focus on design. And 90% of them, they're women, they're passionate. They want to do something. So this is how I picture the entrepreneur life, to be honest. You know emojis? Who knows emojis from the mobile? Come on. No, really, really, who knows the emojis? Just? Oh, no, I can't tell this if you don't know them. I need like 70%. Okay, so yeah, it's good enough. So there's the smiley emoji, the one that's, you know, the dancing one that you all know. You know which one is for the entrepreneur? I feel entrepreneurs, they are the smiley emojis with the stars, the blue stars. Because we're always excited to do something. We always want to push doors. And, you know, even if they slammed back in our faces, but we want to change. We see stuff that no one sees. We want to go and see that vision, and we only see that. And we, just like horses, we just focus on the target and go. No matter the risks, no matter the challenges, we want to make a change. We want to do something different. We see something and we follow it. Every day, I'm sure we wake up, this is how I feel. I wake up, okay, other than having 3 kids and one of them, the legs on my face, or while co-sleeping with them, or, 5 a.m. feedings, it's very lovely as a mother. But at the end of the day, when I wake up after 3 cups of coffee, minimum, and I'm finally awake, I want to change the world. I want to see, like, what can I do today that will, very small steps that will make me reach further my goal. This is how I feel, and I'm sure, who feels like that every day? Come on. You're a tough crowd, by the way. You're not giving me 70 on anything, really. Just like 70% of the crowd. You don't feel like that? We're here to connect and talk about the challenges today, صح? صح, Arabic. Ramadan Kareem. So I hope in this we can all start the talk and talk about our challenges. Just being here means that we want change. We want to connect, and we want to exchange experiences together. Thank you.
Thank you, Seema. And in mature democracies, you can win an election even with 28%. So, I mean, don't always ask for the 70. But I'm sure you have warmed up 100% of our hearts here. There are, fortunately, many Seemas. There's only one Seema, but there are many Seemas in her spirit. You are part of them. But you can also look at this brochure here, which is really brand new. And I would like to dedicate this edition to the Commissioner, because it shows a little bit what we are doing in private sector development and investment promotion. And it shows some project examples where you have the Seemas of the Arab world, so to say. But now we have talked enough. This is not talking about you, this is talking with you. And for that, we need to have moderators. So I'm very happy now to switch to listening mode and to hand back the microphone to Sumi and to Brian. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
I'll hand that on.
Get that for you? Thank you so much. I can tell you that we have an audience on Twitter. We have, if you're following the hashtag, which we have here, you can see, EU Med for Business. We'll share this around again. There's quite a lot of comments, and from all over Europe and all over the countries that are participating here as well. A lot of participation from Jordan as well. Just suddenly spiked, I have no idea why. Commissioner, thank you for your speech also. I think one of the key words to take away from this today is resilience, which is part of the global strategy that the European Union has. But as an entrepreneur myself, I can tell you resilience is one of the founding elements of your character that you need to persevere and to overcome, be prepared to fail. And the brainstorming that the Commissioner spoke about, which we're going to begin now, essentially from hearing from you, this is to open up the resilient character, to be able to determine your listening mode, to see what you need to take away from this, to learn quickly. So we don't want to take too many big, long speeches. We want to hear a lot of information from your experience, and we want to hear a lot of points which will be elaborated on later. And so this brainstorming session we want to kick off before we go to the video conference in just a few moments. So I want to hear from a few people in the room. Sebastian, where are you? We spoke a little bit earlier. Can you give this man a microphone, please? Just to give some context about ecosystems. So the work that you do, tell us who you are, where you're from.
No?
There we go.
Now it's working.
Snapshot.
I'm Sebastian. I'm the founder of NPACT. It's an organization that's supporting startups, businesses in the Middle East, in Africa, in Asia right now. And I just want to share one little information update. We recently started something called Data Lab, and we're analyzing startup ecosystems around the world. And something really interesting, so I'm not talking about investment climate because I think there are people knowing these things much better here. But what was interesting to see if you compare North African cities and ecosystems to ecosystems in general in Africa, also in Asia and in South America, These ecosystems in North Africa are very comparable, and the conditions are quite fine. I mean, I was surprised when I seen the comparison between Tunis and Bangalore, and they're quite, when it comes to the conditions, on the same level. And that's actually surprising from my side. I didn't expect it because, I mean, Bangalore is one of the capitals for the tech scene, but when it comes to the conditions, it's similar. So that's actually all I wanted to share at this point.
That's great. We want lots of comments like this now before we go to the videos, and we're going to dwell on these a little bit more detail. Sumi, who's
I think I saw a hand coming up here, and again, Seema couldn't have set that up any better, but this really is your chance to unpack all of the challenges that you face, identify some of the obstacles that you face. I mean, look around you. You are entrepreneurs and innovators, change makers in your region, and this is your opportunity to jump in and to work with the Commission and with the EU to really share and shape your region. So let's bring in this hand here that I just saw, please. Can we get a microphone here? Coming right here.
Thank you. Tell us who you are, where you're from, please.
I am Rami Lakis. I'm a professor of politics, and I manage a local NGO in Lebanon called LOST, Lebanese Organization of Studies and Training.
Could you stand up, sir? Just so everybody see you. Thank you.
I put some notes on Your Highness' speech, and I think that this should be very operational for an EU strategy, that we should feel it, not just hear it, from a South perspective. You mentioned something very important that we believe in, that economy, 50% is psychology. And we don't need to do always innovation in order to make profit. And I add something very important, that also we need to go for culture to make better economy. I think from a perspective of young people I've been working with since 20 years from now, I realized that many young people in our country are fascinated by innovation, but sometimes they are not capable to do innovation. But this has created a gap. They have left what is trend, what is going on. So many people have left very important economic sector, especially like agriculture, or even artisanal, or even any other type of things that could make profit, but now they did not succeed in what is going on, and they're looking for innovation, and they do not get enough support.
Thank you. Let me just stop you there. We're going to bring out Amel. Your quick comments on this as well. Can I take the microphone for you?
And Amel, you can, this is an invitation to all of you. Join us right here in the center, if you'd like.
Hi, everyone. My name is Amel Saiden. I'm from Tunisia. I'm heading a startup association, the first startup association in Tunisia, but I'm also an entrepreneur in tech. So maybe just setting the scene about the challenges we're facing as entrepreneurs in the region. We know that the MENA, our region is extremely fragmented from the market perspective. We have issues of mobility of goods and people and services. We have currency issues. We have political issues as well, of course. So we have all types of issues one can imagine. But yes, as Mr. Köhler has mentioned earlier, we do need a new development model. But the question is, what kind of model is that? And what kind of sense of urgency we should leave this meeting with. So I think, and I quote, the house is really on fire, and we really need to do something about that. So, and of course, we need to remember the hashtag digital transformation, because our neighbors are really taking this seriously, and they are transforming. So what does this mean for our economies? What does this mean for us? So yes, we are here the doers, but maybe we need to do more, maybe we need to do better, maybe we need to do together. And maybe also we need to do louder so that people can, so our policymakers can hear us. So yes, it's about resilience, yes, it's about taking risks, and yes, it's about just being innovative in terms of the way we are approaching things. So I'd like to leave this meeting with a sense of responsibility, because it's up to us to tell our neighbors, to tell our policymakers what needs to change, because we have a different perspective of the reality, and it's really up to us. And and you can join us in the third workshop. So I've spent my first life in sales, so I can prevent myself from doing that. So you can join us in the third workshop so that we can take this discussion to the next level.
Thank you, Amal. That was a great way of putting it. The house is on fire. This is an important moment. If you don't realize these screens here that you're seeing, we're not alone in this room. We have 4 parallel workshops running, and we want to give them the opportunity also to join us in here. And I think we're looking right now at Tunis, if I'm not mistaken. We'd love to hear from you.
Hi, Tunis. Can you hear us? Yes, you can.
They can hear us. We'd like to hear you if that's possible.
Can you open your mic? Yeah.
Tell us how the weather is. Oh. There we go.
An on button. Excellent.
Technology is important as well. Tunis, give us your perspective from there.
Hi. Who have we got at the table? No. Tunis, can we come back to Tunis a moment? Jordan. Can we bring Jordan up? I think Tunis is frozen.
All right. It does look like that screen's frozen. Maybe we can move on and come back to introducing our country workshops.
Let's try Jordan just a moment. Yes, Sumi.
Yeah, let's maybe gather in a few more inputs because I've seen a lot of hands going up. The young woman with the scarf here.
Just tell us who you are, where you're from, please.
And you can join us here.
Yeah, sure. I am Dr. Amania Asfour. I am the World President of the International Federation of Business and Professional Women. I'm also the founder of Hatshepsut Women Business Development Center and Business Incubator in Egypt. Well, as a young entrepreneur, not now, but I started my business when I was a third-year medical school, and I found out that real challenges is for startups. Now there is a lot of incubators that is really doing a great job. But what Commissioner Johannes said is really about opening market for our products and about connectivity, as Sima said. So what I am really thinking of recommendation of this, how to have a real network of business incubators across all over our Mediterranean regions that would have the strategies of 3 Ps, which is the first is personal empowerment programs for our women entrepreneurs. The second P is the policy advocacy. We need a lot of policies in our governments for government procurement policies, for startups, for financial inclusion for women. And the third P is the product development. How can we have a standard package designing branded that would meet the standards of Europe, and how can we support our young entrepreneurs, our SMEs, to have real standardization and product development to meet the whole market. So it's really about this conference. I'm looking forward to see how can we gather by the support of the European Union and the European Neighbourhood to have this network of business incubators across the Mediterranean. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Can we try our teams again? Who have we got?
I think we've got Egypt up.
Yeah? Egypt, can you hear us?
Yes. Wave if you can hear us. And say something as well.
Hi, okay. Let's see if we can hear you. Who's in front there? Yeah. How are you doing there? There we go. We've got audio.
Hello, can you hear us?
Hi,
yes.
Egypt. How are
Welcome.
you? Who have you got in the room?
Hello, good morning. This is Egypt, and we are very glad to be here today. We are hosted by EBRD that have been very generous in making this possible, this connection. But also we are here a group of very talented and passionate group of startups and SMEs that are here with us. And we have been working since now 1 hour and 30 in order to come up with some recommendation. So the team that has been chosen here is how to unleash the potential for entrepreneurship. We have been dividing ourselves in 3 subgroups and the 3 stages of between ideas, startups, and scaling up. So the things are ongoing, but I will give the floor to our moderator because he, Mr. Sami, who will be introducing the first ideas that are stemming from this discussion.
Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. This is Nizar Sami, the moderator of the session. Right now, as just Ibrahim mentioned, that we have been working for the last 1 hour and a half, and we have 18 companies representing different types of startups and entrepreneurs from agribusiness, manufacturing, handcraft, and so on and so forth. We divided the group into three panels, the idea stage, the startup stage, and the scale-up stage. And we saw during the last hour that we have some sort of opportunities in the coming in the market, such as access to a network of mentors, having access to finance, having access to knowledge areas, and how to foster entrepreneurship across the country, even in the remote areas. So right now, still in the preparation phase, and our next call, we will come up with a list of recommendations and suggestions for the event. Thank you, and we'll
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
See you later. Thank you so much. We have Rabbi Jamala. He is with Shamal Start. Thank you for tweeting. And if you get a camera on the hashtag, just so you can see. If you have comments throughout the day, put them with the hashtag, and we'll try and call some of them out for the group here as well. Just so you can see that.
Yeah, if we get the camera on that. We heard some different important points there from Cairo, and we'll check in with the other countries in just a moment once we get them up and running and know that we can hear them as well. But we heard some points there about inclusion, inclusivity, also about building and the right environment for investment. I want to come back to some of the hands that we saw. Let's hear from some entrepreneurs, some innovators themselves. Yeah, please, can we get a mic here?
Hello.
You can join us here in the center. Just tell us where you're from and what you do.
I'm Saad from Palestine.
Welcome.
Okay, I know the first image that you have now in mind. Yeah, about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. No, we the new generation, Your Excellency, we have new offers, let's say. Locally, back in Palestine, now we are mobilizing and creating spaces for decision makers, offering new thinking, which is, we call it now social entrepreneurship, as a solution to the Palestinian economic and ecosystem. Internationally, we are now offering new approaches that reminding the EU with their values, because we believe in these values. You see, so what we do is actually now we're developing new business models that help the Palestinian ecosystem to be sustainable. Because for decades now we used to depend on international fund. Not anymore. Actually, we think that we have the opportunity to turn conflicts into opportunities and creating very safe spaces. Later on, we can talk more about the ideas that we can offer.
And what are the biggest challenges that you face in building that?
Actually, many. One of them, of course, the Israeli occupation and the agreements that we have. Yeah. Secondly is the corruption within the Palestinian government. Thirdly, as entrepreneur, you know, we need, for example, 1 month finalizing documents. Takes months and months. So, you know, it's a lot of efforts you need. But we believe that we can create and we turn the conflict and challenges into opportunities. Back in Palestine, you will find smart people who can create connections through digitalization, through the online, through businesses, etc. So we believe that we have to make profit for social good and impact. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Excellent. We're going to come to all of these points, and I saw a lot of people nodding when I heard the word corruption, so we're going to have to talk about financial governance as well, I think. But I think we have Tunis on the line now, and hopefully we can hear them. Tunis, if you can hear us.
Hey, Tunis. Wave if you can hear us, Tunis. Or not.
It looks like they're having a heated discussion of their own.
Who else do we have there? Okay. Let's see. Jordan?
All right. Yes, we're...
Okay. If our team can try and get a connection so that we can come back live there as well. I interviewed the Canadian ambassador yesterday, just on what you were saying, and he said the Canadian-EU trade depends absolutely on values and rule of law. And he said without those, the shared value system, it would be impossible to build. Hi, Tunis, we can hear you. I hope you're speaking politely to each other.
Et que vous dire d'autre? On est très heureux d'être.
Tunis, can you hear us? If you can close the microphone, please.
Essayer de faire ressortir des idées clés qui vont aussi comment dire, orienter nos politiques pour le futur.
Okay, if you can close the microphone so they can hear us, please, as well. Thank you. Anybody else want to quick comment? Just here, please. Thank you. I'm impressed by the gender balance in the room, actually. This is not normal for Brussels,
Yes,
I have to say.
speaking of inclusivity, we're doing it well here.
Hello,
Hi.
Perihan Aboulayla from Candid Foundation, coming from Egypt, from civil society. So actually, Egypt is the third biggest population in Africa, and it's the most youthful population over the world, because we have more than 75% of our population less than 30 years, and 3% of our population is 65 plus. Yes, we have challenges for people to live more than 65 years. And one of the words which I didn't hear today is civil society. And here in Egypt, actually, to outreach this youthful population and entrepreneurs, we need a lot of partnerships, which I didn't also hear today. So, and as Commissioner Johannes said, we need new modules. Like, we need a lot of partnerships with private sector, not just with the European Commission, that is usually the main supporter. And with these new partnerships and with the different countries which are represented today, I believe that there should be more opportunities and more support for the entrepreneurs in the area. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. You can have that on.
Okay, entrepreneurs, of those with their hands up, who's an entrepreneur, first of all? Can we get a microphone here, and then we'll come to you, sir, also? The microphone just here?
Just at the end of the row.
Yeah, thank you. And then bring another microphone to the gentleman.
Hello, please join us.
Thank you.
Hello,
Hi.
My name is Sana. I am a social entrepreneur. I have an organization called Womenpreneur. The commissioner talked about something very important, which is talking to our politicians and pushing democracy. I would like to insist that we live in a very connected world. So basically what's happening in the MENA region affects what's happening in Europe, and this is something we will see in the upcoming years. So I would also like to emphasize on the role of the EU and the North in general in what's happening in our region. We cannot have a sustainable democracy if the EU is still supporting dictatorship systems in our region, because that can only influence negatively everything in our region, including entrepreneurs in the region. So I would like to emphasize on this point, because I think it's not only about investment. I would like to consider it as a partnership for the future of both regions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Gentleman
That's
here
an important
next.
Point.
Tell us where you're from.
Hello, my name is Loim Al-Ahmi. I'm from Jordan, Shamal Sard. I work as head of innovation at Luminous Education. One of our projects is the largest manufacturing business incubator called Shamal Star, which is an EU-funded project that we kicked off in November 2016. The project today actually has been able to invest in over 100 startups that created over 300 jobs in the north of Jordan. 60 of them are active today, and we have a good majority that already have businesses and exporting to Europe. One of the initiatives that we're doing today is also we worked on creating a Jordanian Entrepreneurship and Innovation Association, and we had the honor to meet with His Majesty over 3 times the past month, and we just recently announced the first Ministry of Entrepreneurship and Digital Economy in Jordan. And while we're meeting with His Majesty, we were actually discussing about how can we solve a lot of the problems that we're discussing today. And we ended up having 2 recommendations that actually I think there will be an interesting opportunity to see if we can do that on basically the conference and on EU and the South the South region as well, which is basically creating an authority that focus on solving these problems. We can discuss a lot of problems, we can discuss solutions, but for sustainability of how can we create this authority that basically will be part of solving a lot of the problems and the initiatives that we're working on today. And the second thing, I think the best recommendation is the funding. How can we create a sustainable ecosystem? It's not just from the idea stage, but also for incubation and growth in order to enable all of the startups that are located in the Middle East or the MENA region to export and have businesses with Europe as well.
Thank you. Let's develop that a little bit more. Lady here, please. Microphone. Thank you. Tell us who you are, where you're from, please. Thank you.
Bonjour. Good morning. I'd rather speak French, if you allow me. Besma Jawi from Algeria. So this is a recycling and waste management company in Algeria. So we're talking about entrepreneurship, economy, but I believe that the circular economy is really the basis for entrepreneurship. Social entrepreneurship should be really the underlying principle for the future of our children. What we need to really, in the future, think about environment, circular economy. You talked about European production, labeling, and so on. But I think it is important to also talk about eco-design, so that we really include the environmental dimension. Environment will be, I think, really should be the red thread of these recommendations for the future. We have to start from the environment in order to achieve a better future.
Okay, we try Tunis again.
Yeah, let's give Tunis a shot. If we can bring in Tunis and see if they're able. It looks like you can hear us now, Tunis. We would love to hear from you. We hope
Big
it
wave
works
from
this
Tunis if you can hear us. Can you hear us?
time.
There we go.
Hey, all right. Third time is a charm.
The internet's still functioning. That's excellent. Who do we have around the table?
Can you hear us?
Yes, we can.
That's perfect.
Don't touch anything. Who have we got here? No, just leave it. Just talk.
All right.
You broke the internet, guys.
Okay, looks like we're struggling perhaps again with the connection to Tunis, which is a shame. It looks like you can hear us. We're struggling to hear you. We can... Yep, no, all right.
Tunis, if you can hear us, put something on the hashtag, would you? And put a question for the audience or a comment for the audience. Use the hashtag and we'll pick it up here until we have this problem sorted. Okay, Sumi.
We've been gathering a few thoughts here, and perhaps Commissioner Hahn, that's something we can come to you, or Michael Köhler, we can come to you and ask you about. We've heard a few comments about funding long-term, investment long-term, also questions about governance and the connectivity between Europe, the EU, and also the southern neighborhood who we're discussing today. Is that something that you'd be able to comment on? If we can get a microphone.
Hello? Can you hear us?
Just at the right moment.
While we have Tunis, let's go to Tunis for a second. Hang on, Michael. We've got you. Okay, please don't touch anything. Who can speak there? Gentleman with the beard looking at us. And we're
Okay, hi Brussels, this is Tunis here.
Hello.
We're a very good company here with a mix of entrepreneurs, academics, NGOs, talking about business climate and how to retain competencies and attract companies here in Tunisia. And we're just starting our discussion. But I will tell you more after an hour of debate and come up with recommendations and ideas for the future.
excellent. Thank you. Now that we have you working, we look forward to hearing from you later on again. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, who's next? Lady here, please. You got a microphone here, please? Just keep your hand up. Susie. Do you want to come to the front?
Yeah, please join us in the front.
Hi, this is Lama from Palestine. So the more success stories you see in an ecosystem, the more would follow. And from my experience as a Palestinian entrepreneur and someone who works in the social entrepreneurship ecosystem, I think one of the major problems that we have in Palestine that we have so many accelerators, we have so many incubators, and most of them are funded by EU countries, but they're all donor-based. So a program comes, a program ends, and then no one knows what happened to the beneficiaries and how they benefit from the program. That's one. Two, one of the main issues, I think, is the control over the quality of these programs, the quality of the mentorship delivered in these programs. And this is something I suffered from personally when I was once incubated, that the quality of the mentors and the quality of technical support that is given to the entrepreneurs have to be supervised better in Palestine, and I think in other neighbor countries, because I have seen this problem in other countries as well. Yeah, this is
one of my other recommendations.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that perspective. We have a lot of hands going up. Do you want to, somebody in this side of the room?
Yeah. Gentleman here who's...
Morocco.
It's on.
I think one of the issues that we're not raised is the whole idea of perspectives. Because many of the actors, the happy few, is you're working with the same actors doing the same thing over and over again. What happens when sometimes working with governments, like the same type of infrastructures. So we cannot expect different results by trying different approaches with same context. Another issue is mindsets. Because sometimes when you do that with large-scale projects, you need capacity. So if you want to develop startup mindset, you need the capacity of a startup mindset. By working with the same existing large organizations to implement projects on the other two shores of the Mediterranean leads to challenging results sometimes.
What is a startup mindset? How did you develop it?
Well, it's basically not working with the same big fish. Like thinking about small fish, many different small fishes, and thinking about these fishes in different sides of the ocean to really create a different mindset that creates different types of results, but not working with the same big institutions to deliver the same type of results, which often doesn't really work. Thanks.
Okay, just Ayad, where are you? Ayad, see here? Not that one. Okay, no, he's not here. We'll talk this later on. This exactly about this. Here you are. Give this man a microphone, please. Just a second. Quick comment. Trade between Arab states compared with the EU. Snapshot comment.
Thank you.
What's wrong with that picture?
Well, as the commissioner mentioned already, for some reason, Arab intertrade doesn't get along. So there was this very interesting article in a book published in the 90s called "The Future of the Arab Nation," published by Arab economists, and they figured out that if the Arab economies don't start to integrate, then basically all economies will have a negative growth rate by the time we're living in now. And I think there's pretty much truth about that.
Okay, let's bear that in mind. We'll talk about that more later on.
There was
a
hand here who definitely wants to get a point in. I see you jumping out of his chair. Can we bring you into the
this
center?
Comment, then we go to who do we have on the screen at the moment? Morocco? Okay, so we're going to go to Morocco just after you, sir. Tell us who you are, where you're from.
Oh, sorry, just after me. My name is Mounir Nabti, and I live in Lebanon. I'm Lebanese-American. I see a lot of familiar faces here, and also some of our startups are here, which is very exciting. Connected to the question about mindset, so we've been running startup programs in Lebanon and the region for over a decade, and I have over 2 decades of work in education and experiential education, and looking how we actually can measure soft skills. How can we measure character? And we know these things are very powerful, and we know from a lot of experience that what gets measured gets counted. But our schools, our universities, our programs, even most of our accelerators are not measuring the things that actually correlate with entrepreneurial success. So we've been doing research on this over the last several years, and the top 5 character strengths that correlate with entrepreneurial success. I don't know if we have time to do this as a little quiz.
I want to hear it anyways.
As a quiz? Do you guys want to guess, or should I just spit them out?
Spit them out. We'll talk about them later.
Okay. Number 1 is honesty. Honesty and authenticity. Not just that do we not lie, but do we perceive of the world as it is? When we do a customer interview, are we trying to learn from the customer, or are we trying to interpret it to already fit what we had previously said? So honesty is first. Leadership is second. Zest is third. Zest, enthusiasm, fairness, and gratitude. And what I think these really relate to, often our programs, we are talking about the business model canvas, but we're not talking about what it means to build a team, to actually have people connect, to collaborate, all of these soft skills. So we've been working on these mechanisms to measure them, and then when we measure them, we can actually quantify programs, startups, etc. And so if we can take this aspect of measuring and then apply with it entrepreneurial mindsets to our programs and see, not just in these countries do we need hundreds or maybe 1,000 startups per year going through these programs, these learning experiences, but we need hundreds of thousands. We need millions to have this culture and mindset shift. So if we bring these aspects of data and we can apply entrepreneurial thinking and tech to our programs with the funding, with the EU, with this partnership, with these opportunities, then we can address some of these massive challenges that we have in the region.
Let's talk more about this later. I just have one really big case study in mind to emphasize the opposite of where honesty and all those things come into play. You may have...
Honesty, leadership, zest, fairness, gratitude.
Yeah. And
sorry, what was the question?
I'll come back to it later. Anybody have a big entrepreneur in mind that doesn't really hold those characteristics. Morocco?
Yes, hello.
Hi, how are you?
Very fine, thank you. What
Who do you have in the room?
Well, we thank you to give us the floor right now because we're going to start the debate here. We noted with interest what Mr. Commissioner Hahn said just before about going through new areas of the economy, and this is exactly what we are going to touch here into the debate because, as you may know, Morocco is searching a new economic model which is supposed to be more inclusive. So we're going to first talk about social entrepreneurship here, and surrounded by businessmen, social entrepreneurship, self-entrepreneurships, SMEs, also beneficiaries from EU regional programs led by the EBRD, for example. So we have a range of businessmen here and women, of course. And then we will talk about the life cycle of entrepreneurships. So how can we support the life cycle of entrepreneurships and to be a true entrepreneur through life. This is what we wanted to put the focus on during the debate. And obviously, our main objectives into the debate, the recommendations will be how to create jobs, how to unlock the potential in the regions, how to unlock the youth and the women, for example, possibilities to be part of the economy, the Moroccan economy. And we're very glad, I'm speaking about from everyone here, to be part of this MENA Vision, like Eurovision, but MENA Vision show our private sector today. Thank you.
Thank you, Rabat. It's great to hear from you. And those are all the topics we're going to be speaking about in this room as well. I just want to bring one person in the room who I got to meet just before we got started, Abdel Rahman, who's here from Amman. You're 17 and a startup founder, essentially. Is that correct? Come in and tell us your story.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Abdurrahman Dalak. I'm from Jordan. I have a startup. It's a recycling company. We create a recycling machine that reward the children to teach them how important is the recycling. And we started in Jordan in the schools. Now we're working with 20 schools in Amman. And allow me to speak in Arabic. I want to explain an idea I have to tell you. مرحبا رمضان كريم. Who speak Arabic here?
Almost the entire room.
All right. المشكلة في المنطقة العربية بشكل عام.
So the problem we have in the Arab countries is that many organizations are supporting entrepreneurship. Yes, we do have this organization. The problem is there is no consultation, no cohesion between all the donors. Sometimes, actually, there's overlapping, many fairs, different organizations overlapping. There is no cohesion between all the donors. So, and I would like to say that we see fairs, trade fairs are organized where all the producers can really take part and show their products. But the purpose of these events is to invite the government to see, so that they can see that all the institutions have, really contributed. And this type of events gives an opportunity to really show concrete results. And we think this type of fairs are important events for young people to see that through their production they can find outlets in other countries. Myself, I could not find partners. There is no networking between the different donors or other people who share my own interests. So there is a poor management of the startups. So the startups are not supported through networking.
Thank you very much for that. And you know, just where we're hearing about coordination of actors on the ground, Brian, perhaps Ms. Heckman, Janet Heckman, if we were talking about the EBRD a little bit earlier, if we can get a microphone here. We're hearing that some of the challenges on the ground is coordination between some of the different institutions that are helping out. What is your perspective on that?
Sure, thanks a lot. First of all, Michael, we should have done this in Cairo. 6:45 sunset versus, what is it, 9:30 in Belgium, so we would have eaten dinner a lot easier. But anyway, great to see all of you today. And I think a lot of issues that have been brought up are quite relevant. But I think one of the key things, despite the talk of doom and gloom and 1 million new jobs a year that need to be created, take a look at some of the more exciting developments in the last few years. Uber, for example. I recently met with the head of Uber for the Middle East, North Africa, and in Egypt alone, there are over 200,000 now licensed Uber drivers. These are jobs that didn't exist 5 years ago. So the real challenge is to be able to come not just with the ideas, but also the regulatory and entrepreneurial environment which helps to experience these. I really want to thank the commissioner, who's unfortunately stepped out of the room, but one of the key things that he's done is led high-level business missions to the countries in the region, bringing together all of the multilateral donors and the key IFIs to help improve the business climate. But in essence, we see 4 real impediments to development of SMEs. So one is policy and regulatory framework. Second is access to finance. Third is access to knowledge. And then the fourth is entrepreneurial human capital development. And I want to mention in particular what we're doing with access to finance and access to knowledge. So we've worked together with our partner banks in all 6 of the countries that we work with to provide small, medium enterprise lines of credit for the SMEs. And in conjunction with this, we work together with the banks who provide the access to credit in order to help to train them how to lend to SMEs and why lending to small, medium enterprises or women in business is different from traditional corporate banking. This is absolutely critical. But access to knowledge also is key. And through our Advice for Small Business program, which we have in all 6 countries that we operate in and just launched in Lebanon and Palestine last year, we've trained over 2,000 entrepreneurs in areas like how to trade, how to bid for contracts, how to develop businesses, etc. And then in terms of entrepreneurial human capital development, we have programs such as Women on Boards, how to encourage more women to be on boards, providing the training that's necessary, and working with the corporations throughout on boards. So EBRD offers programs in all 6 of the countries, and really happy to talk to any of you today. And I also have my colleague from Tunis here, Antoine, on how we can help you. And a big thanks to the EU.
That's an important point to make, that this is an opportunity. If you are an innovator, if you have a startup, a small or medium enterprise, we do have representatives in the room here. We do have investors. We have representatives of the institutions who you can speak to directly as well. So that's an important note. Brian, do we have our next?
We're waiting for someone to come forward in Jordan, so in the meantime we can stay in the room.
Okay, let's stay in the room. Let's get some more voices. I see one right here. If we can get a microphone.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Sami Hourani from Jordan. Actually, we're missing the commissioner because I wanted to second on his. He wanted to have a legacy, and his legacy was basically that he wants to move from giving grants and donations to investing in ideas and people. And my question to him was, is this going to be structured in the EU? Are you going to change the policies among the EU of the way that you're going to give donations, the way that you're going to give projects to the developing countries in general and the southern countries? That's mainly my question to him, and I hope that this goes to a more tangible, structured approach rather than just like a promise.
What's missing in the structure for you?
Is that still the EU is giving grants, still is giving donations rather than investing in companies and in people's ideas. So moving from the idea of donations to investment, to sustainable approach where it's not about 2 or 3 or 5-year project, it's a lifelong project.
Okay, is that a challenge other people in the room are facing? Maybe we can get some other voices here. Okay, we've heard from Amel already, but perhaps two rows back there, yes?
Still see you are, where are you from? Amel, we'll come back to you in a few minutes.
Hello, my name is Jackie Kamil and I come from Egypt. I'm the managing director of a local NGO called Neighbourhood, which is an incubator for early stage social enterprises. I actually have a few observations, if I would say, on how things work between international organizations, donors, NGOs, entrepreneurs, and so on. And the things that were very visible today, I mean, like throughout the discussion, we're talking about creating jobs. 1 million jobs are needed in Egypt, probably just to maintain the current status quo of unemployment. And we're still seeing most of the funded projects by different EU donors or big multilateral donors and so on. They're still focusing and defining jobs as jobs in a factory, on a production belt and so on. And these are the old jobs that are going to be obsolete very, very soon. We are not seeing any, I mean, like, all the entrepreneurs who are with us today and all around the other countries, they're all innovators in the stuff that they're creating, and they need new jobs. The vocational jobs that the solar sector in Egypt needs are completely different than the vocational jobs that we're training for. So, and at a certain point, the sector will come to stagnation because the vocational skills that they need are not there.
Yeah.
And when we apply with proposals and so on to train on these jobs, these are not the jobs that you guys want to see, or you count, or you report on. So that's one thing. The other thing is the usual suspects. As an organization, we have applied several times to EU funds, and I mean, like, on different things that are related to work that we've been doing for 15 years and recognized by many of the people in the ecosystem as very good work, innovative. It really delivers. But still, there is the short list of the usual suspect people who would get the work and get it done through the other local, smaller organizations. But I think, as much as we're saying we need innovation from the entrepreneur side and from the government side, the politicians, we also need from the donor side, from those people who are thinking of, and you have some power on doing that.
Okay, thank you. We have, we'll come back to these points for sure later on. Jordan, can you hear us?
Hi.
Hi, Jordan, finally. How are you doing?
Good. You? Everything is okay?
Yeah, we're good. We can hear you clearly now. What are you doing today and who's with you?
My name is Ibrahim Faza. I'm the manager of Shamal Start Accelerator in Jordan. It's a business accelerator funded and supported by EU. And we are all gathering here. We have a great people that split in the 3 workshops. Each workshop is discussing one of the topic. And hopefully they are working hard. I think you can see them in the background. And they are working, try to provide recommendation for you about how innovation, how entrepreneurship can help in job creation and can help in economical development. For us, Shamal Start is a good example for this. We are a project supported and funded by the European Union, and we support entrepreneurs among Syrian refugees and Jordanian in the hosting community to build their startups and create the impact, the economical and social impact. In the last 3 years, we managed to train more than 800 entrepreneurs. We incubate and invest in more than 100 startups that create more than 300 jobs in the north of Jordan among Syrian and Jordanian. And hopefully we can replicate this and build more impact with collaboration between Jordan and the European Union.
Thank you so much. We will come back to you a little bit later on as well. More comments in the room, Sumi?
Yeah, I mean, maybe a question we can all take a look at is how are you scaling your businesses? You have small markets, not necessarily a lot of mobility between your markets. How does that work? Can we get some hands on that? Right here? Excellent. Please join us.
Thank you very much. My name is Yahya Houri. I'm the managing director of Flat 6 Labs in Tunisia, which is a startup accelerator and a VC fund that has a presence in 6 countries across the region. So I want to come back to your question about scaling through collaboration between the private sector, and it's a bit related to Janet, what you were saying a bit earlier about knowledge enhancement and knowledge sharing between the work that private sector is doing in Europe and elsewhere, and the work that the private sector is actually doing in the Middle East. And we work very closely with Antoine and his team on the ground, so we're very familiar with the programs that you guys have to offer. But because you took the example of Uber, I actually want to take another example that just happened in Tunisia, where we have a startup called eTaxi that has been moving forward but struggling over the last couple of years. And Taxify just came in and basically blew them out of the water a week ago. And it's not Taxify's fault, because they're working on improving their private sector growth. But I feel like that's a missed opportunity where Taxify could have worked with local private sector partners to expand faster, cheaper, and I feel that the best stakeholders to actually encourage European stakeholders or European private sector actors to coordinate and collaborate with local private sector actors is the EBRD, the EC, and a few of the other ones that are on the table today.
Can I ask you just before you go, the fact that the competitor came in and blew them out of the water, does that not tell you the market's working well?
It does. It's a huge indicator for the fact that transportation, definitely needed innovation. I think all of my Tunisian colleagues here would agree with that. And we all also agree that the startup that was already, locally present could have done much better in terms of market share. But they could have actually done it maybe in conjunction with these guys. It could have taken a bit more time. It could have maybe cost a little bit more. But I feel that maybe with a bit of support or encouragement from the stakeholders around the table today, it could have happened in a much more organic fashion rather than top-down, let's move forward to the next country.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
The microphone just here, please. Thank you. Tell us who you are, where you're from, please.
Sure, yes. Good morning, everyone. Elisa Miko, Managing Director of Governance Center. Just to come back to 2 comments, because 2 comments were made on Uber, and I think it's an interesting example, and I talked about it in a talk I gave, TED talk I gave on governance in the Middle East. I think it also raises an interesting point, is that there are very few companies in the region that are today able to scale to the point where they are competitors to international organizations or international companies. And the example of Careem, because it's operating in a similar space, I think is a telling one, because at the end of the day, what happened is Careem essentially got acquired. And so the space where local companies are able to grow to a point where they're actually able to compete with international firms, and that was the point I think that was made earlier, is something that's today missing. So there is venture capital to essentially enable them to grow up to a certain stage, but I think that the stage where companies are able to either operate across borders or compete with international and multinationals is the space that sort of is today the missing link for companies in the region to go international. So the ones that we do see operating across borders, apart from the usual suspects in the oil and gas sector and state-owned companies, are very few. So the types of companies, like I'm thinking of Aramex, for example, that have been able to sort of raise capital and continue operating. And I think the thinking that would be interesting in this conversation today is what would it take for that to happen in the region?
Can I just hold you on that? It's not as if the region has a unique problem in this. Europe itself has exactly this problem, scaling up, getting from startup to world-class companies as well. Do you think we have learned lessons in the last few years which are now teachable?
To the context of the Middle
Yes.
East? Certainly. I mean, certainly. I think that there's a fundamental geographical parameter that plays into the hand of European startups in terms of being able to access all of the European markets.
So single market structure.
I think that obviously that's a big part of it, and that was raised in the comment around trade and whatnot. I think there's also more to it in terms of the kind of the mentality of operating cross-border and also in terms of companies being able to target specific niches. So, you know, in the region, there's, I think, only statistics, latest statistics I saw pointed that there's only 8% of companies that have online presence. So again, are companies that are being launched with that ability to, because obviously when we think about Airbnb, Uber, these are companies with small intangible assets, so they're mostly intangible asset companies. They're able to therefore scale across borders in a different way. So are we thinking about sectors in the region that could target this online presence? There are companies essentially with low tangible assets, and there's a few. I don't know if you know of Mom's World in the UAE. I gave the example of Aramex, which is sort of in that space. So I think the thinking would be, can this online / intangible space company be better exploited in the context of the region where the borders are much more physical and present?
Just any entrepreneurs involved in manufacturing here? Yes. You give a microphone this, and you also. Yeah, you're involved in manufacturing. What do you do? Come to the center first, will you?
So it's not directly manufacturing. I run an e-commerce platform for Syrian artisans to make their products, and we're promoting them and ship them globally. My name is Salim Najjar. I had the chance to start a company in Syria. I'm a Syrian entrepreneur, then moved to Jordan to start a company there, and recently I started a company in Europe. I'm one of the people who received support from Shamal Start in Jordan. And what was interesting for me to see how we can change two things. First is how to change the look, how we look at Syrians, for example, not only a problem like refugees. And here's where we start working with Syrian artisans, and we'll start promoting their products outside Jordan. So we done around $200,000 in sales and promoting Syrian products outside Jordan. So, and what is interesting when we try to move to Europe and we start finding this problem of a lot of customs are added to products we export to Europe, and then we found out there is an agreement between Europe and Jordan. And this agreement saying if you have 15% of your workers or to 20% are Syrians, then you get free customs. But applying the agreement or the requirements of agreements, it's out of our possibilities as a startup. And when I tried to find someone who managed to apply it, I find only one factory with 300 employees already, and he managed to apply it. So it was very, very hard for us to apply it. So this way where I can see.
You need a one-stop shop for information to get the knowledge base for the. Okay. Maybe there's somebody in the room can help you with that as well.
Yeah, and the requirements of applying and meeting the conditions of the agreement was very hard for a startup. So I don't think the ones who managed and to put the conditions was looking at kind of startup applying for.
That's a great point. Thank you so much. Anybody else want a quick comment on this? First gentleman here.
Yeah.
Thank you. Anybody else over this side of the room? Okay. Any ladies? Okay.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. My name is Dirk. I work for Euro Chambers. Our job is to represent European business SME interests here in Europe. I would like to add a dimension to the debate, which is the European SME interest in the whole debate. I think we had a lot of interesting comments from entrepreneurs from the South. But if you want this partnership to succeed, we also need to think about entrepreneurs in Europe and how we can motivate them, convince them to work with you. As I said, as an organization, we represent 20 million SMEs in Europe. I can tell you, most of them do not think South when developing their business. So we need to think together. If we want to build a partnership EU with the South Mediterranean, please let's also think how we can convince EU business, EU SMEs to think south and engage into partnerships with yourselves. There's plenty of beautiful examples that we've heard this morning, but together with the EU, we should also think how can we convince our SMEs in Latvia, in Poland, in Czech Republic, in Germany, to engage with yourselves. Then I think we will have a more sustainable economic partnership between both.
Okay, so it's really a two-way street on the business-to-business level as well. Earlier you had raised your hand and you had wanted to speak. If I could ask, yes, please join us. You've been waiting a long time.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Barbara Marchito of the European Investment Bank. We are the bank of EU member states and have a long history of working in the southern neighborhood. And I would like to thank the Commission and DG NEAR for organizing this event and for inviting us. I would like to pick up on some of the ideas that have been mentioned by the entrepreneurs and our colleagues from other IFIs. And Commissioner Hahn this morning started by saying that SMEs are the backbone of many of the economies in the southern neighborhoods. They account for a large share, 90% of the private sector and about 50% of employment. So they're really ensuring access to finance for SMEs is critical to develop private sectors that are vibrant. When I say vibrant, I mean a private sector that can deliver growth that is inclusive, where everybody has an opportunity to access a decent job, including young people and women, and so that growth can be well diversified and resilient. This is another word which was often mentioned. However, when we look at how inclusive the financial systems are in the southern neighborhood, the quick answer is not very inclusive.
Okay.
They're a very well developed banking system, but the amount of lending that goes to SMEs, despite many efforts and many reforms, is still low, and access to finance is mentioned as one of the main constraints for a lot of business. There is a lack of diversification in the offer of financial instruments, and I think this is a point where it is important to make progress going forward. The constraints, you won't be surprised to hear them. It's economic development, it's the regulatory environment, the lack of competition, and lack of transparency is very difficult to get information and track record of the entrepreneur and their credit history. Collateral regimes are very stringent, and this is particularly harmful for young enterprises who don't have a lot of access to post as collateral.
Okay.
But I would like to also put all of these elements together to have to give a positive message. Someone else before mentioned that we can turn challenges into opportunities. I think in the same way we can turn the constraints that the enterprises are facing, if we work around them, into drivers. So improving the macroeconomic framework, improving the regulation, and promoting competition, and working on capacity at the intermediary levels so that they can cater better for SMEs, understand better what the needs are, and also at the level of the enterprises. Colleagues from the BRD mentioned the capacity of the enterprises to also present business plans that are intelligible and understandable for banks. I think what is important is to, if there is a gap or a bridge between enterprises and SMEs in particular and the financial sector, is to address these issues and lay a foundation that is comprehensive, working on all these items together, not just focusing on one aspect. And technology can play a big role in enhancing access to data and so to credit history of enterprises. So
technology can bring all of these elements that you're addressing
together. Well, the big data, fintechs, I think they have a role to play in enhancing the access to information that we have.
Okay, you brought up
it is a lot of work, but it is important work that we can all do together the EIB, other IFIs, Entrepreneur, the Commission alongside us. And so I think this is very important because it can have an impact on millions of people.
And that's an
Thank you
important
very
message that we're here to bring something positive out of this, despite the challenges that we're facing, of course. There's some hands here and here, and I know that you've been waiting quite some time as well. So let's start here, and then we can come to you.
Thank you. Antoine Saledou-Chou, head of Tunisia for the EBRD. Just wanted to pick up on the point made by our colleague from EIB and the point made earlier on how to bring European SMEs to the region. And from the point of view of an investor, we really believe there's tremendous opportunities in the region. We invest over €1 billion in the private sector in the region per year. And we do bring European SMEs and beyond even corporates. Okay, I've been corrected. So we bring them in the aeronautic sector, in the automotive sector, in the agribusiness, where we see big names looking south. And what they like and what we like here is usually the engineering talent, which is really excellent. I mean, I speak more for Tunisia and Maghreb, which I know more, but I know this is also the case for the rest of the region. And of course, proximity with Europe. But when we review business plans, we see, of course, some gaps, and they are mostly, around financial reporting, where we see, maybe accounts that change significantly from quarter to quarter. That's not necessarily something as an investor you want to see. We see not necessarily very structured also corporate governance, which, as an investor doesn't give you necessarily the comfort you want to see. And so these gaps, we try to address them together with the European Union. So we have this program where we have supported over 1,500 SMEs with advisory to try to help them there and scale. And that has contributed to create over $1 billion of incremental turnover. But I think just to finish, the biggest challenge I see to bring more foreign investors to the region is still the negative risk perception for the region. And I think collectively here in this room, we have a very fair assessment of the risk of the region. But I'm often very shocked when I speak to people in Europe, the way they still see Tunisia, where I'm based. They still have a very sort of 2014, 2015 view of the country. And when I tell them that it's a Tunisian company which is operating critical parts of the collateral management of the European Central Bank, they look at me like if I just told them that the Eurozone is going to collapse. But of course, we're talking about world-class products. And this is what I think we need to shout about, the great homegrown stories, success stories from the region. And I think that's where our role can be in this room.
Okay,
so
thank you.
I like the success. You have a microphone here. Please join us.
Next.
Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. Hope you're having great discussions. So my name is Ahmad, and I work as a regional manager for Techstars in Middle East and Africa. So we are worldwide networks that helps entrepreneurs succeed. Through our work, we supported 92% of the globe, which is almost the entire world, to build an ecosystem through programs like Startup Weekend, Accelerator Program, and VC funds. Through our working with this diverse community all across the globe, we find out there is 5 ingredients to build a startup ecosystem. Those 5 things that are required for us if we wanted to build an ecosystem. First of all, it's talents. We mentioned here is soft talent, the talents that we needed to have on entrepreneurs. We need to work with people. We need to work with, to have them, the skills, the entrepreneurial skills that they have. Second, after building the talents, we need to build density. One person cannot build the startups. That's why we need innovation hub. We need centers. We need to build into the density of the people to bringing them together. We have to focus on the culture with the third things. We need to influence that entrepreneurship culture in the society. We need to make people know that failure is completely fine for the startups. And then capital, which is very important to access for the capital, help people raise the fund, and then governmental regulations. It's the surrounding environment. We heard about stories where successful entrepreneurs are trying to build, but regulations is really obstacle for them where they wanted to build their startups. If we want to see the South, it's really hard to see where is the gap, because unfortunately South is not one country, which is something we all agree on in the conversations. So if you look in independence country, we see the gaps. The one things that we see, it's very common, if we're going to look in the countries in South, is actually the entrepreneurial ecosystem is not led by entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurs are not doer. It's just like, it's not, actively working to build the ecosystem. They just sit on the side. Government and policies, donors, organizations, partners, investors who's working on building the ecosystem. I think this is one of the mind shifts that we need to change. Also, we need to put into an idea ecosystem require a lot of work, 20 years at least, to build an ecosystem. So we need to have the people who have the long-term commitment. Usually governmental and policy don't have this long-term because they might not get elected in the second term, so they focus on the short terms. They need the policies, they need to focus on the short numbers. That's why they focus on capacity building, cutting startups. So we need to have this paradigm shift and look into those 5 ingredients and see what we can do in each one of those to empower them.
The 20-year view, while you were speaking, I was really pulling up figures on China, because most of the big Chinese cities today were unheard of almost 20 years ago. And the rate of growth, and I pulled up this in quarts if you want to find, the 50 metropolitan areas with the fastest growing economies. Number 1 is Dublin, in fact. The fastest growing GDP was 21.2%. Of the next 49 after that, 2 are in India. 1 is San Jose in the United States, and 50th is Hanoi in Vietnam. The rest are all Chinese. So if you think that the North Africa, all the countries that we're talking about today are unable to transform completely within 20 years, have a look at China. The capacity is there. I think we've highlighted most of the elements that are required to put that in play. And like our friend here has just said, the paradigm shift, and let's see what this chart looks like in another 20 years. Lady here, thank you. And then you, sir.
Good morning, Ingrid Schweiger from the European Commission. Very interesting debate ranging from entrepreneurship, ecosystem skills, investment before. And I wanted to come back on your question to the Commissioner on investment. I mean, he's not here, but working for the Commission, I know a bit the background. Is there a shift in this relationship from donors to a different perspective? And I would say there is a paradigm shift. And at the root of that is, I think, the realization among donors and financial institutions and at EBRD and our partners, EIB, the needs in terms of modernization, infrastructure development, you name it, they are such that it's impossible with grants or with limited funds, for governments, for donors, to respond to that. So what is needed, and you see that in the whole development work, is much bigger alliances, thinking differently, joining up with financial institutions, that's what the Commission does, joining up with the private sector and trying to mobilize that jointly. And there, I mean, the key word, probably you have heard about it, it's the External European Investment Plan. Huge initiative over the next 3 years, rolling out 4 billion, and potentially, that's the idea, leveraging private sector, because we absorb the risk for these investments. But what does that require? It also requires working on the investment climate, because these are just the funds and the guarantees behind it, but to see the opportunities, so to work also with you or with private sector in the country to identify the key challenges. And again, partnership, I think, is the key word. There are partnerships between different institutions now. It's governments, donors, private sector, financial institutions, and this is really necessary to change something.
Thank you. Gentleman here's been super patient with us. I have my back to him, so I neglected a few times. Tell us who you are, where you're from, please.
Thank you so much. My name is Ayman Ismail. I'm an assistant professor at the American University in Cairo and also the founder of the AUC Venture Lab. It's a startup accelerator. And for the past 7 years, we've accelerated more than 150 companies, and some of them have actually grown to become substantially sizable. The question is, and it's back to the lady's point about scalability and growth. We've been becoming good and actually creating startups. And I see a lot of startups that are coming out of incubators, accelerators, different programs, and that's wonderful. But most of them are actually growing to become micro, small, maybe medium enterprises. I don't see many of them scaling and growing to become regional champions. I don't see many of them actually being able to do that. And when you ask them why, it boils down to once they start receiving investments, becoming sizable, they start looking for other domiciles, they start changing their legal incorporation, and then very quickly moving their headquarters to some other location, sometimes in Dubai, sometimes in Europe, Singapore, US, Delaware, the usual suspects. And the question is why? It's all about the regulatory framework, the institutional framework, the tax structure, the governance framework. These are the issues that are interesting when a company becomes significant in size. So unless we get to the point of institutional reforms within our countries, I think we're going to be stuck in producing many SMEs that are actually going to grow and move forward somewhere else, where the wealth, the headquarter is going to be somewhere, and we're all going to become operating countries. And by the way, Europe risks the same thing. So for the EU, if you want to really do something, it's kind of nice, I would say cute, to support incubators, accelerators, and startups. But the part that we cannot do, and you can do, is working with governments to create institutional reform, legal reform, rule of law, governance frameworks. You know the list. That we cannot do, and that is much needed. Thank you.
That's such an important point. Thank you for bringing that up. And in fact, now that you're speaking from the American University of Cairo, perhaps we can bring in Cairo if you can hear us. Everyone wave there if you can hear us. There we go, running to the microphone. Maybe you can chime in on that point that we just heard, that essentially when you create a small or medium enterprise in a place like Cairo, eventually when it grows big enough, it might leave and create wealth and capital elsewhere, which is a problem, as you said, that Europe is facing as well.
Sorry, could you please repeat it again?
Can you hold the microphone closer to you?
Hold the microphone a little bit closer, but what we just heard the point from a representative from the American University in Cairo here saying that essentially there are a lot of startups, a lot of small and medium enterprises in Cairo, but when they get big enough, successful enough, they leave taking all of that wealth and capital with them. How are you working, and how are you working to prevent that, and is that really a big challenge there?
Yes, of course, this is one of the challenges that have been addressed in the workshop right now with the teams. So I think if we go to listen to the recommendation and suggestion coming out of that, we can come up with a conclusion. It has a multi-dimensional factor, of course. Part of it, access to resources, the internationalization, going to enlarging the business, and so on and so forth. So please allow me to go to the next stage, which is the showing up the results from the workshop, if this is okay.
Yes. Quick summary, yes.
Yes, a quick summary, please.
Yeah. Okay, so as I just mentioned earlier, that we divided the workshop into 3 stages: the idea stage, and the startup stage, and the scale-up stage. So I'll invite a representative from each and every group just to give us like the conclusion about what they did in like one minute and a half pitch for them. So I will start with Yasmin. She is in the field of oil and gas as well as other food businesses, and she is representing the idea stage team. Yasmin, the floor is yours.
Hello, everyone.
Hey there.
We have different problems here in Egypt that can hinder the development of the process of developing an idea from the start. One of the things here in Egypt, we don't have a critical thinking education. So we have one of the suggestions that the Ministry of Education here in Egypt should adopt some curriculum development related to critical thinking at a very young age, so that innovators can start from a very young age. One of the problems also that hinders the development of an idea in Egypt is the lack of funds. If someone has an idea, they become very worried about the funding. However, recently they started developing programs with very small loans, but people are still scared to go and apply for these loans because we don't have a safety net for failure. For example, if a new entrepreneur starts a business and the business ends up failing, they owe the banks money and they can go to jail. So not everyone is encouraged to go and apply for these loans. One of the other things here that we discussed was copyright protection in Egypt. A lot of young innovators can come up with an idea and go through a lot of hard work to bring it to the market, and the next day someone can just steal this idea and they're not really held accountable for copying their ideas. One of the challenges also that we have is the absence of a clear path related to paperwork. How do I start? What are the requirements? We don't have one-stop shops. If I have an idea now and I want to go somewhere and bring this idea to life, the mentorship is not very clear. It's not accessible all around Egypt. There is a centralization in, for example, Greater Cairo, but people in rural areas, they don't have a clear path if someone wants to develop an idea related, for example, to agriculture. They have limited education, for example, and they don't have access to, let's say, mentorship.
Okay, let's just leave it there for the moment, and we'll bring this back to the floor also. Just to throw us out here, it seems to be strange that in this day and age where we have digital compliance for all sorts of things globally, that we can't create a third space for countries like Egypt where you can do all the compliance, you can do all the financial due diligence in a virtual space. So if you want to participate in that, I can see why the European Union can support that and find a viable way through. Maybe talk about it a little bit later. Now, got to take somebody you haven't heard from before. Sumi?
There's this young woman here who's been waiting patiently.
Thank you. Come forward a little bit.
Hi, my name is Tiwa. I'm the director of an art institution from Libya. And I can say that regarding governance models, we don't really have these priorities and policies because we have two governments. We don't know which one to follow. That's the first. And but regardless of this, I've noticed this since like the past 3 years. There was a lot of focus from young individuals on starting and establishing their own enterprises. And a very,
just a second, can we close the microphone, please?
yeah, starting and establishing their own enterprises and creating their own jobs instead of waiting for governments and all of that. But there are like these main challenges that does not fit or cannot be compared to the situation of neighboring countries, for example, like Tunisia or Egypt. And the first one is that the qualified individuals, these young people full of talent, they all shifted from working on their own businesses and enterprises to working in the humanitarian sector because it's more stable. There are a lot of INGOs. The humanitarian sector is like all over the place in Libya, and everyone wants good payments. That's the first. The second is that the kind of training that is being received does not fit to the situation. You receive a training about risk management, but it doesn't say anything about how to deal with your business in a situation of war or conflict or bombing or whatever. That's the second. And of course, the governments and all of these priorities that are not clear, like it really makes people less motivated to work on their creations and their jobs. But still, like the situation is still improving, even slowly, and there are also like a lot of challenges, like the media and everything, the security situation. But the main problem for not having like sustainable enterprises is that there's no banking system. You can't receive money, you can't transfer money. So there is no, there is a very limited approach to how big your startup can be.
Thank you. Lots of valid points to hear there. Morocco, I want to come back in with some points as well. I think we're going to hear from Egypt again after that. Morocco?
I think we're first hearing from Egypt, some more of the recommendations that have come from the discussion there. We heard some recommendations already. Can you fill us in on some of the other recommendations that you formulated there?
We recommend coordinating with the Ministry of Education to include critical thinking in their curriculums, and encourage universities and schools maybe to introduce competitions for students for the students to practice at a young age, becoming entrepreneurs or getting this idea in their heads. As for the copyrights protection, we need to have also a clear path here in Egypt for entrepreneurs, how can they protect their ideas if they face this problem of someone copying their ideas? Where do they go? What is the procedure? We were just discussing it with one of our friends here, that she had to pay a huge sum of money to go to a lawyer to protect someone who copied her idea. So we need a clear path for that. And of course, we need to develop some maybe one-stop shops for people across Egypt. It doesn't have to be only in Greater Cairo. Maybe we need to decentralize this to go to the rural areas where at these one-stop shops, they can have more information. If someone has a simple idea, how can they develop it further? And maybe they can include at these one-stop shops mentorship like sessions to help them develop their ideas even further. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can we just check, do we have Morocco before we go back to the floor? Let's go to the floor for a moment. And then
do we have Morocco? Okay, there we... that's Tunis.
Tunis, any quick comments?
No. They're still working through the recommendations here.
Tunis, hi. Any quick comments? What's the most interesting thing you come up with so far? What's the most interesting thing you come up with so far? Can you hear us?
Yes, yes.
Okay, give me one or two quick points from your discussion.
Wait, sorry?
One or two.
Okay. Okay, we talked one of the points that we discussed was the education for young Tunisian here, and how can we guarantee the training for potential entrepreneurs, for we will people to become potential entrepreneurs, and all the universities, and not only in some specific one. We also talked about the private sector and how the private sector can gain from collaborating with the state on designing training for young people who already got their diploma but didn't have the right skills to have jobs, to get a job.
Okay. Let's leave it there for a moment. We'll come back. We're going to skip to Morocco. Do we have Morocco again? Thank you, Tunis. Morocco.
Head in hand.
Morocco, can you hear us?
Okay.
Can we give them some sign? No. Okay.
It looks like there's some struggles hearing us there, but maybe we can come back to the room.
Gentleman here.
Yeah, you've been waiting for quite some time. We heard there's some points about training, education, anything we can pick up on.
We'll come back to you next time. Just we're coming up close to lunch. Ensure our sugar levels are all on the floor.
Hello, I'm Emmanuel Noutari from the Anima Network. We're in France and in 20 countries from Europe and the Mediterranean country. I'm there with some colleagues from Initiative Women. I just come back to the topic of new economic model, that was raised at the beginning by the commissioner, which is, in my opinion, very important. It relates to the goal, what we are looking for. Okay, we need more finance, we need to scale, we need to, and plenty of services and effort are put there. But what kind of society and what kind of world are we developing together? I would like to highlight a figure from the United Nations. They say that if we want to get back on track for the Sustainable Development Goals, we need to invest $4 billion every year. Which is not so huge, $4 billion, but the public sphere will only invest $1.4 billion every year. That means that the remaining nearly $3 billion will be invested by the private sector. So really, entrepreneurs, investors are really a key part of the solution for the planet, for the future of our society. And I think the good news is that all the entrepreneurs, and I'm happy that we have there entrepreneurs from our cohort from Palestine, and precisely in that topic, they are tackling these issues. They are providing solutions against food dependency. They are providing solutions against water shortage. They are providing solutions against dysfunctioning of energy in remote areas. New entrepreneurs are doing it. The digital is a key solution for disintermediating some businesses, so bringing more value for the clients and for the producer at the beginning. So really this new generation of entrepreneurs is very interesting to look at, so hence the necessity to help them to scale. But which means that in this area, and I just make this general statement, but because we in the afternoon probably we come back to concrete initiative, projects, tools. But in this area probably there is an opportunity to be a pilot, to be leader in providing the new models, to providing the new solutions to tackle issues for the planet, really. Okay. Why? Because as I think it's a South African entrepreneur said that innovation, it will come out of necessity, and in South Africa we have a lot of necessity, so we innovate a lot, and that's exactly what is going to happen in this region.
Thank you. So entrepreneurship as part of the new Green Deal. Here we go. Tell us who you are, where you're from, please.
Bonjour. Good morning. I'd rather speak in French. Rémi Lassofayenne. I am a former researcher, and I represent the University of Algiers. Well, if I look at what the civil society can do and how the civil society actors can really contribute, you know, in different sectors and even in the economic sector, I will be short, but I think, you know, it's relevant. And I hope it's relevant, because I think what we need is really also to see how can we really promote the economic development of in Algeria. You know, this is my homeland, and we want to contribute to the economic development of our country. And I would like to really thank the organizers of this event for the kind invitation. So the policy which is advocated by the organizers of this program are also always trying to sort of really streamline, you know, and how to learn from, you know, the ideas. And in Algeria, we try to see, you know, how the entrepreneurs are really looking for ideas. Where do they find ideas, so that we really can help these young people to promote their ideas, and so that they develop their companies and create jobs. And I think it is important really to keep in mind this specificity, because in the university in Algeria, we have a lot of young people. This is where you can really find the young people. We have to target the students in the university. We have to also look in the research centers at university level and try already to involve these young students in this policy, so that we can really streamline all these efforts and achieve the objectives, reach the objectives. And I would like to add that we have also tapped in another really area, so the young entrepreneurs in the civil society. We have in Algeria civil society organizations where young people will express themselves, have the possibility to really create interactions with others, exchange their ideas with other stakeholders of the civil society. And I would like to really appeal to you. We need to involve and all these young people and really implement new visions. And I think it is important to really reflect on all this, on these new visions, so that we can really become more efficient, and in order to really achieve the objectives of this policy.
Quite some time. My apologies. My back to you, so I didn't have a chance to see you. Please join us.
And I represent the OECD, and I'm pleased to intervene here, you know, along with some
our partners, including the EU, we cooperate a lot with them in the region also, so I'm really pleased to be here today. I want to make a little focus on foreign investment in the region also, because we do work a lot on that, and we've heard, quite some encouragement how you foster, you attract, the region is more attractive. Actually, to be frank, the news are not that good in the region. The level of FDI, foreign direct investment in the region, is still rather low. We haven't reached, the level before the financial crisis in 2008. We're still 40% below that level. Also worrisome is the region is losing its share in the world share of FDI. So that means, the region is becoming a bit less global, less integrated in global value chains. Of course, at the intra-regional level, we talked about regional integration, the Commissioner mentioned some numbers. But again, the region is not really integrated between the different countries. In ASEAN, in Southeast Asia, they are 3 times more integrated than in the region. So it's missed opportunity. But what we can do, to further attract, in FDI in the region, of course, an investor will tell you, I want political and social stability. But this is where also we do believe that the role of you as entrepreneurs, is extremely important in building the image of the region. Because the region, has this potential, and you are the voice also of the region. Another aspect is building on your assets. The strategic, geographical location, the access to market. Beyond the region is a whole African continent also. You can become a hub also for investors. You need to build on, of course, your skills, your workforce, your youth. This is all important. And what we were trying also to do in the OECD, together with the EU, and this was mentioned also by the gentleman from UAC, is also building, the policy framework, a conducive environment. We heard it several times. But concretely, what does that mean? We try to work, on, let's say, 3 main aspects. I would say the legal environment. What are the rules for investors? How can we help, the government in reforming their investment laws? Recently, there's been a lot of countries in the region reforming their investment law. Is it according to the best practice? Does it really attract investment? This is a question we should always have in our mind. Then institution.
Can I just stop you there? We need to go to some others and back to Cara. We just got a quick question. You say that Asia is 3 times more integrated. What do you mean by that? How do you measure 3 times more integrated?
60% of the FDI of the ASEAN region is within the region. In the MENA region, only 20% of FDI is within the countries of the region. So there's a lack of opportunities to trade, to invest within each other.
Okay.
And then less of productivity and opportunities.
Thank you. I need to stop there. I need to go back to Cairo for a moment.
Indeed.
Cairo, how are you?
Hi, how are you guys? I just wanted to let you know it's been a humbling experience working with you all today and meeting all of these entrepreneurs from different backgrounds. It's Ali Saleh here from the Candid Foundation, and let me quickly brief you with all of the recommendations we have in the startup stage group. So the recommendation we have is redistributing accelerators all over the areas in the countries, including rural areas. And the second recommendation we have is creating market entry guidelines to help entrepreneurs to go international or beyond borders. And the third recommendation is to have partnerships between international accelerators and the local ones, whether we have it here in Egypt or any local accelerators. And the fourth recommendation is to enable the governmental support for all of the startups in the ecosystem under what we call it, the Ministry of Entrepreneurship and SMEs. That was a wrap up for our recommendations here, and that's it for me.
Thank you so much, Cara. Excellent. We're going to go to lunch in just a few moments.
I think we just have a moment for a few more hands.
Yeah,
You've been waiting patiently. If we can get a microphone over
and
here.
this gentleman in the front who already spoke, we want to hear you just, if you keep your comments short, because we're going to go to lunch in a moment.
Yeah,
Please.
very short. Hello, my name is Tracy Ashar. I work as project manager in Verdis Investment Fund, Fondation Jan. So we invest in green startups in Lebanon. So it's been 3 years, and I'm really pleased that here we have many green startups. But just I want to emphasize on the circular economy, and I truly believe in it, that in every country that you have to believe in the circular economy to, usually in developing countries we think that Europe is better if we bring products from there, and we don't think about the importance of using our resources in the country. And also I want to say that in Lebanon we use our challenges as an opportunity, as it was mentioned in Palestine, because the environmental and social crisis can lead to business. Here I want to, it can lead to business and it can lead to jobs. And for this reason, I think that the EU, you are investing in these countries is for leading entrepreneurs, because we don't have enough of jobs. And for the EU, just for your program, it has to be on a longer term and to see the impact in terms of environment and social, and in terms of business.
This paradigm shift you were speaking about earlier on.
Thank you.
This gentleman has also been waiting quite a long time. One more moment, sorry.
Thank you.
Please join us in the middle.
Short comments, if you will, please.
Excuse me. Hello, everybody. My name is Nuh Al-Shiyab. I'm from Jordan. I'm academic. I'm not entrepreneur. Well, I know that everybody is tired, but just I want to tell you a story. I started studying in Germany in 1998, and when I was asking my colleagues, the Germans, okay, what you are going to do when you finish your study, some of them, they answer, well, I will start my own business. I was shocked. Wow, started my own business, okay. I was thinking, he's stupid. He will not study further, get his PhD, and go back teaching at the university, as I am now. But after 20 years, I recognize that I am the stupid one, okay? Why I tell this story? I tell this story because what we need in our region actually is a culture of entrepreneurship. We need to teach our students, okay? At the school, at the university, how to start their own business, how they do to know the regulation, and so on. So that, what can we do? We do, actually, I think about entrepreneurship education. Entrepreneurship
What age
education.
would you start at? What age would you start teaching entrepreneurship at?
Yeah, for doing that, actually, we need to change the curriculum, okay, for teaching at schools, at university, okay? This is number one. And number two, what I would like also to emphasize here is we support entrepreneurship, but do the entrepreneurship that we support create job? We focus a lot about high-tech entrepreneurship, but we don't have to forget that there is also another kind of entrepreneurship, different sectors, okay, that can create jobs. This is my idea.
Thank you so much for that.
We have
Gentleman
time,
here,
I think,
and
for one more
where's
voice,
the
and then we're going to hear
gentleman?
from
Grab my arm.
Morocco.
He's gone again. Okay.
Okay, well, I think we also need to hear from
We did Morocco, then
briefly, and
quick
then we'll
comment
get
from
one
you.
final
Yeah.
comment here.
Okay.
Morocco, if you can hear us, we'd love to hear what you've been working on there.
Yes, Morocco speaking. We're in the middle of the debate, actually. I will switch in French so that people could interact with you, maybe.
Yes, sure. Just keep it brief if you can.
On
Thank
est
you.
en plein milieu du débat.
So we have been discussed here social entrepreneurship, and we have seen that a social entrepreneur is just an entrepreneur after all. And he needs really to be supported in order to really implement his ideas. And it's also important to see, what kind of funding are available for startups, small companies. And then, according to the ambition of this entrepreneur, we will continue supporting him. And I think, this is what the others wanted to share with you, that a social entrepreneur is just like any kind of entrepreneur. Here we had some people sharing with us what kind of obstacles they have to deal with. Everyone is trying really to make a difference. We are here to help the ecosystem. MENA Plus program is really trying to help them. What we need is not just funding. Of course, fundings are important, but what we need is also to have technical assistance, change the mindsets and help the entrepreneurs conquer new markets, outlets. I think this is really important. We'll come back later on. I don't know if you have any questions.
Quick comment here, and then we're going to wrap up.
Thank you. Just 2 points basically to emphasize on what everyone said, and especially what the commissioner said about the low tech, high profit margin when we talk about innovation, because the perception of innovation usually it's flashy tech. But when we focus, actually, I have we have a business that actually the co-founder is sitting here. She's running textile promotional products. One of their products is basically a tote bags. So it's basically not high tech, it's low tech, but she has a co-founder from Austria. She's from Jordan. In the first couple of months, they hired over 15 women into their production, and they sold over 200,000 euro of revenue to Austria. So this is the hidden opportunity as well, because if they were able to start this business and target Jordan, there are multiple vendors the similar way, and they might not succeed to have such amount of volume. But they looked at the bridging between the EU, and they literally targeted Austria, they targeted Portugal. So the idea, now they are facing the growth struggle, basically, which come back to the gentleman from the AUC when he spoke about regulation. We now look of ideas, how we can create good ideation, innovation, and incubation centers, but when it comes to growth funding, there's Euro Free Trade Agreement, regulations, rule of origins, these things that I think the EU that can support much for it. And how can we create something that's not just for the country, like in Jordan, now the EU office has basically been pushing that a lot. But how can we literally create that for the Southern? Focusing on Euro Free Trade Agreement, regulations, lobbying, advocacy. This is what I think we believe that the EU can support, and with the community, with the entrepreneurs, because when it comes to implementation, the top-bottom support and bottom-up support, if they both collaborated, I think we'll have it the right way.
Thank you. Philippe, 30 seconds, sir. We're going to close.
Not even 30 seconds. That's a promise.
Thank you all. This was extremely interesting. Just 2 points you may want to reflect.
2 really short points.
To reflect on in the afternoon. We've heard a lot that the EU can help in shaping or accompanying the investment climate. How? How can we define the agenda for the EU? The gentleman from the university in Cairo was saying the EU can do that. How do we link up with private sector to define what are the constraints, what we're discussing here? And the second one, very much linking up to the Jordanian colleague, is how do we help to change the mentality in schools? Because 70% of Moroccan students coming out of school, they want to enter the public sector. So how do we change that? How can we help governments to change that?
2 really important points. Thank you so much. And I think we are going to have to wrap up there. This has been a really interesting discussion. This is just the tip of the iceberg, because now what's going to happen after a break, of course, is that you are going to go to another centerpiece of this conference, which is the committees, the workshops. There are 3 workshops. One will be in the main hall, and that will be the one that's focusing on growing and retaining talent, so making sure that talent stays in the region. That's important. The 2 other workshops will be upstairs, and people will be in the hall, if I understand correctly, to lead you to where those workshops are. One is on unleashing entrepreneurship, entrepreneurial talent, and the 3rd workshop will be on investment and employment, making that work. So this is where you get to actually put all of these thoughts down on paper and formulate that to put that forward to the EU. We should say that this is a break for lunch, right, Brian?
There is also on breakthrough, our colleague here asked that we put forward breakthrough leadership. Maybe that goes in the entrepreneurship section as well, so you can put that on your table too. Now we have a break for lunch. We have lunch just in the other room, I'm guessing?
There's a hall, if you're observing Ramadan, this main lounge is for you to spend some time and relax and reflect a bit on what we've been talking about before the committees. If you do want to have lunch, then yes, exactly, that's through the hall there. So
then we come back here at 5:30 today as well. So everybody's a wrap-up session, very short, here at 5:30 after the workshops. Thank you all so much for your attention today.
Well done, everyone.